Hey guys, how you doing? jpsarrireviews here, and welcome again to another video review. Now, if you are a fan of Ranma 1/2, more than likely you already watched the remake series that is now being aired through Netflix, or you're in the process of doing so. But in this video, as a fan of Ranma 1/2, I watched the original series back in the 90s. I want to share with you how I feel about it, the good and the bad. First, let's set the foundation for those who are unfamiliar with Ranma. Ranma 1/2 is a manga, the original story, that started back in 1987, lasted all the way until 1996. 407 chapters, 38 tankobon volumes. It is one of the most popular, one of the most known manga series of all time. My introduction to Ranma was back in 1990 something, in the middle of the 90s. I watched the original series back in Mexico. One thing about being born in Latin America is that we were introduced to manga and anime earlier than in the United States. A lot of the shows came in the United States in the early 2000s and the mid 2000s. But for us, we were able to see things from the 80s and the 90s. And at that time, I did not know much about Ranma. Of course, I wasn't reading manga during that time. So I didn't know anything about Rumiko Takahashi, who is considered the queen of manga. She has created so many great stories. Some of them, for example, Inuyasha is another one that is very known. And a lot of people love what she does. Now, this story is a romance comedy. You know, it's about this young kid called Ranma Satomi and his father. They travel to China. They're Japanese, of course, continuing their martial training. And they come into this place in China where there's this springs of water. Every person who falls into this cursed springs becomes the person, whatever died there, they're gonna become that. So Ranma falls into this spring called the Drowned Girl Spring. And when that happens, he gets cursed. They didn't know. So every time he gets splashed with cold water, he becomes a girl. He transforms from a boy into a girl. His father, he falls, Mr. Satomi falls in a spring where a panda dies, so was drowned. So he turns into a panda every time that happens. The only way to turn back to normal, their normal self, is by them to be splashed with warm water. So it's a hilarious story in itself. And I remember watching the original anime in Mexico. And because it was a bit edgy in some ways, where there was nudity, something that was known for. In Mexico, of course, they have to cut some of those scenes. They didn't cut them. That's the great thing about Mexico, is that what they did is that they make some changes. You knew that the character was naked, but they cover the character, or they expand the image so you didn't see the body. Hilarious situation here is that, and of course, this goes back to some of that cultural differences between Japan and other parts of the world. He was promised in marriage. His father had a good friend, Mr. Tendo, from childhood, and they make a covenant, or they make a commitment that they will marry their children. So of course he has his son. He was already promised to marriage to the daughter of Mr. Tendo, Akane. And of course, this is so hilarious because there are two kids that are very different. You see Ranma, who has this curse. He's very talented martial artist. And then you have Akane, who is also, she doesn't like to be dominated by men or by boys. And the hilarious situation is that she's always been chased by other boys who want to date her. And of course, now they put into this situation where they're going to be married and they don't want to, both of them. So the adventure here is how hilarious, how funny it is, the situation that they're in, and how they start developing feelings for each other, but at the same time, you know, they trying to escape each other, and other people are thrown into the mix. This is the funny thing about Mr. Satomi, that he actually, in the talking about the comic book, talking about the manga, he also did the same promise with other people. So Ranma is set to marry with other girls too. So all these adventures happen, all this confusion happen, and makes such a bombastic moment in every step of the way. There's always something crazy happening. The great thing about this remake is that they have respected, for the most part, almost everything of the original show. Only a few things have been changed, particularly with some of the iconography or some of the imagery from China. Of course, you have to think that in the moment that this was created, China was in the middle of that communist lifestyle. But other than that, It follows the same storyline. It's still, it doesn't change. They haven't changed any gender here. They're not changing the races. They continue with the same traditional values that were presented in that time. And to me, that's what really makes the show so interesting, so powerful, in the sense that it's not trying to change anything like other shows have done, like Senseiya, for example, that we also saw a few years back, and they completely like gender swap and think all sort of things there that really offended a lot of people, to be honest, that were unnecessary. This is respecting the source material, and to me, that is the best thing. And not only that, when I was watching this, the first episode, I couldn't believe my eyes. It's like I felt like cue for cue, step by step, they were really copying a lot of things from the original series, which in my opinion is so good still to this day. Of course, some people might consider a bit more archaic in the style, but it's the same thing. It's like they follow a lot of things, a few changes, and they compress things. It's a more condensed story here in 12 episodes. Some things were cut. Of course, we're talking about that the original series was 161 episodes. So they have cut some of that stuff to accommodate. The great thing about Ranma, in my opinion, has always been how Japanese it feels. I've been watching anime since the 80s, and every time I saw the cultural differences, but Ranma really thrives into that cultural differences. And it's like I remember watching the original series, all these slow moments, a lot of times this imagery that happens from Japan, like it's tiny little images in between the scenes where you see a fish in a pond, or you see the little butterflies flying through the, above the grass or through the bushes, and you see a woman just sweeping the floor on an empty street, and all these situations were so iconic. And I remember feeling like, man, I want to visit Japan. It seems like a cool place where time stands still and people are just, calm about things. I always felt that when I was watching the original Ranma. And I feel that some of that has been translated into the show. However, because the show has been condensed, this new remake, so some of those scenes that are happening in the original anime, they're no longer there. So they have to cut some of those particular scenes, which to me that was a disappointment, because that's one of the reasons why, when I go back to watch the original series, and I watch it often because I do have the collection, the DVD collection, and also have it digitally, I like to watch it because it's just those moments, the standstill moments that I always enjoy in between the hilarious situations that are happening. It's always so good to watch. And of course, because they condensed some of that here, they have taken some of it, but there are times where you can see some of that reflection, a very Japanese reflection that perhaps nowadays you don't get to see as much, particularly in the big cities, but I'm sure that you can get to see. I haven't had the opportunity to visit Japan, and I wish, one of my places that I would like to visit soon. But I feel that that's a reflection. That's something you will see more on the countryside. So people will complain, and I saw some complaints about the last part of the series. The last 2 episodes introduce this character, Shampoo, another girl from China, who, it's hilarious. He gives Akane the kiss of death, but also she gives the kiss of death to the Ranma girl, to the version of Ranma as a girl, but also kiss Ranma as a boy. Because she, in this case, she falls in love for him. And it's so hilarious. And it was kind of left in a cliffhanger there. So that could be a complaint that there was not end. So now we have to come back to the second part or the next thing. We know the second season is coming, which is great in my opinion. But yeah, Ranma was such a interesting show, and I loved it. I love that they respect the source material. I love that they didn't try to change anything or trying to be politically correct in this time and age where everybody feel entitled to be part of the conversation on everything. They try to impose themselves into the stories, and I think that that's the great thing about Ranma. It doesn't try to impose anything. It doesn't change anything. It really respects the source material. Even with the changes, it feels so good. It feels so Ranma. I enjoy it. It's hilarious. I was just really smiling. I was laughing about the things that were happening here. And I was reminded of, my youth when I was watching the original series. So if I have to give the score to this show, in my opinion, it's an 8 out of 10. I would have given it a higher score if they would have just ended this season better. Also, some of those elements that were taken out, some of those still moments that I enjoy from the original series are not as present here. They're there, but not as present. But for the most part, they keep everything tied together well. It's so fun from beginning to end. I don't find any boring moments. Some people may say that, but the reality is that was something that you saw how uneven it was, even on the original. Definitely, this is a way to respect the source material and honor also the great work of Takahashi. They did a fantastic job. But what is your opinion, my friends? What do you think? Have you watched the show? Are you a fan of Ranma 1/2? You are not? Let me know in the comments below. So once again, my friends, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, to comment, and to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification button to be reminded of the next video. Follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The links are in the description. And please consider supporting the channel financially through Patreon. My friends, God bless. Take care. I will talk to you again. Bye-bye.